And now let's move to sleep disturbances. I think that before talking about sleep disturbances in general, we should first talk about what is normal. So what is a normal sleep-wake cycle? This way, every one of us will be able to guess what is going wrong during this period, and maybe every one of us can manage to cope with these disturbances. So the sleep-wake cycle is determined by these 4 factors. So we have the circadian rhythm, the sleep homeostat, the environment, and the flip-flop system. So we're going to start with the circadian rhythm. Circadian rhythm, or possessi, or what we call the body clock. Maybe to explain this, I'm going to compare the 24-hour rhythm with the body clock. So we as humans have our own watches, phones, and computers that can help us tell what time is it and what is the next step to do. And it's exactly the same thing for our body. Our body has its specific clock that tells what time is it and what is the next thing to do. So for example, the day starts around 7:30 a.m. for our body and ends around 9 p.m. We have our highest alertness around 10 a.m. So I think it's more interesting to take an exam at 10 a.m. instead of any other time. We have our greatest cardiovascular efficiency and muscle strength around 5 p.m., which means that it's more interesting to schedule a workout at 5 p.m. instead of any of another time. Our bowel movements are suppressed after 10:30 p.m., which means it's not really a good idea to continue eating after this time, and so on. So as you can see, everything is just well structured in our body. But as I mentioned, we humans have, for example, phones that help us know what time is it. My question would be, what are the different time givers for our body? So how does our body know what time is it? Well, these are the different time givers. So we have the light-dark cycle, the melatonin secretion, and the body temperature. We're going to start with melatonin secretion. So melatonin is the sleep hormone. Of course, melatonin has other interesting functions, and I can talk about one of them at the end of this session if you want to. But let's say the most important one is sleep. So with melatonin, we have sleep. Without melatonin, we can't fall asleep. And that's why I said for our body, the day starts around 7:30 a.m. because melatonin secretion stops at that time. And the day ends around 9 p.m. because melatonin secretion starts at that time. So melatonin is a hormone secreted by a specific gland situated just here, what we call the pineal gland. For the light-dark cycle also impacts our body clock by impacting indirectly melatonin secretion. So with the light inhibits melatonin release, and the dark stimulates its secretion. So and it makes sense. I mean, during the day we have natural light and we need to stay awake, so melatonin should be suppressed. And you know, it's the opposite during the night. For the body temperature, it's more complex to explain, but what we can say is that low body temperature helps you fall asleep, while a high body temperature will just make falling asleep harder. And with this being said, how can all these factors interact with each other, and how do they impact our body clock? So we're going to start with the light-dark cycle. Our body uses the lowest body temperature, which is around 4:30 a.m. as a reference. So if you are exposed to light during the 6 hours after the lowest body temperature, which means between 4:30 a.m. and 10 a.m., this will advance your body clock, which means that your body will be able to wake up early and sleep early the next day if you are just exposed to light between 4:30 and 10 a.m. And when I say exposed to light during this period, it means that before 4:30 a.m. you are supposed sleeping, okay? However, if you are exposed to light between 10:30 p.m. and 4:30 a.m., this will delay your body clock, which means that your body will not be able to wake up early, neither sleep early the following day and the following night. So for example, if you are still on Facebook at 2 a.m. or on Netflix around 1 a.m., or even, I don't know, on Instagram at 3 a.m., this will just delay your body clock and make waking up early and also sleeping early very hard for you. For melatonin, it's almost the same thing. So melatonin secretion starts around, as I mentioned, 9 p.m. If for some reason you take melatonin, because melatonin pills exist, if you take, for example, melatonin at the evening or at the afternoon, this will advance your body clock, which means that you will be able to sleep early and wake up early too. But if you take these pills during the half sleep or in the morning, this will delay your body clock, which means that you will not be able to wake up early, neither sleep early. Okay, so this is about the circadian rhythm, or what we call the process C. The second factor is sleep homeostat. So sleep homeostat is what we call process S, or sleep pressure. So sleep pressure means that the longer you have been awake during the day, the stronger your desire to fall asleep becomes. So if you are just awake, for example, for 4 hours during the day, you will find it very hard to fall asleep at night because your sleep pressure will decrease. However, if you stay awake for more than 16 hours, for example, during the day, this will increase your sleep pressure and thus make falling asleep much easier. And this is how the circadian rhythm and process S, so process C and process S, interacts with each other. You are going to fall asleep when you have a very high sleep pressure and when your body tells it is time to fall asleep. Now we have the environment. So of course, the environment impacts our sleeping habits. So as we have just explained, light exposure impacts our circadian rhythm, physical and mental activity. So I mentioned here that the longer we have been awake, the stronger our desire to fall asleep becomes. And we don't exactly know why process S works like that. But one of the hypotheses says that the accumulation of ADP, so ADP is a product that your body will produce when you consume energy. So when you consume ATP, your body will produce ADP. And the accumulation of this ADP on your brain will increase your sleep pressure and thus make falling asleep easier. So that's why I put here physical and mental activity, because these activities consume energy and thus you will produce a lot of ADP and thus increase your sleep pressure and thus falling asleep will become easier. Naps. Yes?
I do have a question concerning the physical and mental activity. So basically stress and the stress we feel because of any factors like exams or work or even personal relationships is included within this physical and mental activity thing?
Yes, so no, So it depends. It depends on the intensity and the duration of the stress. So if you are experiencing acute stress, which means very short time of hard time, this will not make you fall asleep easier because sorry.
Yes, I'm following.
Yeah, so because you will release many hormones during stress response, or what we call the fight or flight response, and these hormones will just make your brain in a state of alertness. So you will find falling asleep very hard. But if you're experiencing chronic stress, which means that stress that will last for a very long time, this will make your body feel exhausted, because so the stress response is divided into three parts. So you have the fight or flight response, the alarm phase, then we have the resistance phase, then we have the exhaustion phase. So if a chronic stress, which means that stress that is going to last for a very long time, you will end up facing exhaustion stage. So this will just make falling asleep easier for you, because you are consuming mental energy. So it really depends what kind of stress you are experiencing.
Okay, great. Thank you for your response. I hope that everyone is following with us. In case you again have any questions for Siham, please feel free to ask or leave them in the chat box. Yes, Siham.
Okay, thank you, Ahlam. Then we have naps. As I mentioned before, naps will decrease your sleep pressure, because remember, this will just decrease the number of hours you're staying awake during the day. And ambient temperature, of course, as we have just explained, low temperature will help you fall asleep, while a high body temperature will just make falling asleep harder.
Okay, Siham, we have a question from Wahida.
Yes.
So she's saying, is it normal to wake up many times during sleep?
No, it's not normal to wake up many times during the sleep. But here again, if you are, waking up multiple times during the day, can be related to what we call insomnia. But here again, insomnia is a chronic disease. And if you are just waking up multiple times during the day for a specific just during this pandemic, so it's not insomnia. So probably maybe your sleep pressure is not very high, so you don't need to sleep for very long hours in order to regenerate all your body functions. Because why do we sleep? Because our brain needs to rest. So if you are not consuming a lot of energy, and if your sleep pressure is not very high, you will find it very hard to fall asleep, and maybe sleeping 2 hours a night will be enough for you. And also remember, I want to highlight an important point, is that our sleep cycle is divided into multiple stages. So so we have around 4 to 5 stages. Each stage lasts for about 90 minutes. So if you maybe 2 cycles will be enough for you. For other people, 3 cycles will be enough, or for other people 4 cycles won't be that enough. So it really depends on the physical and mental activity and the amount of energy you're consuming during the day. They will impact the number of hours you will be sleeping during the night.
Okay, great. So we have another question from Ayman, whom we're so happy that he's joining us. So he said, we always like to claim that our Mediterranean diet is healthy, but now with the lack of movement, we should actually revisit that. His question is, what would you recommend to eat or drink, more or less? And thank you for saying that. We have a great
Okay, hi, Ayman, so happy that you're with us. So speaking about the med diet, I advise you to stay with us till the end of this presentation, because I'm going to talk about this diet just in a moment. So maybe I can answer your questions at the end of this presentation. And I will also talk why it is important to, let's say, have the kind of balance between physical activity and mental activity and our diets. So I will I will just answer your questions at the end of this presentation, because I'm going to talk about eating habits.
Yes, Siham, you may move to the, we don't have more questions for now.
Okay, thank you. For the last factor is what we call the flip-flop system. So flip-flop system is a more complex system. So when you fall asleep, your brain should maintain this state. So we are either sleeping or awake. There is no intermediate state between the two. And the flip-flop system prevents this intermediate state. It is composed by several areas in our brain. Some of them promote sleeping, others awakening. So for sleep, sleep is promoted by the ventrolateral preoptic area in our brain, and is inhibited by monoaminergic cell groups areas. So in order to fall asleep, you need to activate the VLPU area and inhibit the monoaminergic cell groups. And you will have the opposite mechanism when it comes to awakening. So in order to stay awake, your brain should activate the monoaminergic cell group area and inhibit the VLPU area. And I thought it is interesting to talk about this system because some of you ask a question, they are experiencing insomnia. And insomnia, here again, is a sleep disorder and not a sleep disturbance. Insomnia is a chronic disease, okay? So, and it has a very specific definition. We're going to see it in a moment. We don't really understand why some people have insomnia. But one of the hypotheses is that their flip-flop system doesn't function correctly. So that's why they will experience they won't sleep enough and they won't still awake enough either. So both the VLPU and monoaminergic cell groups works together, and this will just disturb their sleep-wake cycle. So, oh, I didn't put here the definition of insomnia. Okay, so I just wanted to say, to add that insomnia should at least, I think, last for at least 1 month, if I remember well. So if you're experiencing sleep difficulty just for a couple of days, so it's unlikely to be insomnia. And here again, if you have insomnia, you have it with or without this pandemic. Okay, so to summarize, sleep onset will occur as core temperature falls, melatonin secretion begins, fatigue increases, and alertness falls, and the individual having been awake for about 16 hours. So with this being said, I think that everyone of us is able now to say what is going wrong during this period. So what has changed during this period? So for example, you may consider doing more physical and mental activity instead of just of napping or sleeping all the time. You may also try to synchronize your activities with your body clock. Remember the circadian rhythm. So try not to stay on Facebook and Instagram till 2 a.m. because remember, you have the spike of melatonin secretion at 2 a.m. So you will just miss this phase of very deep sleep. Yes, okay. Now let's move to eating disturbances. So here again, in order to understand what is yes.
I'm sorry. So I'm sorry to interrupt you. Before moving to the eating disorders, I do have a question from Cinda, and it's about coffee. And I think this is a question that everybody would be really interested in. So she's saying, Cinda is saying that some people find it really hard to sleep even after one coffee a day, while others sleep normally after drinking several cups of coffee a day. So what can you say about this? And thank you, Cinda, for your question.
Yeah, okay. So here what we call caffeine intolerance. So if some people tolerate coffee, and you know, it depends on how many times and since when you have been drinking coffee. So the more you drink coffee, the more your brain will get used to this product, and then will tolerate it. So caffeine will have no impact on your brain. But if, for example, I never drink coffee. I don't like it. So if I drink just one cup of coffee, I can stay awake the whole night, because my brain is just not used to this. And how does caffeine work? So caffeine will just increase the alertness state, and your alertness will be so high that your brain will find it very hard to just onset the sleep. So it's what we call caffeine intolerance. So it depends how many times you drink coffee per day, and since when you have been drinking it.
Okay, so we do have another question from Wahida.
Yes.
So Wahida is saying, my brother speaks a lot while sleeping and interacts a lot, and yet he can't remember a thing in the morning. Is there an explanation to that? Thank you, Wahida.
So honestly speaking, I don't have a clear idea why some people speak during their sleep. So, sometimes we experience physical movements, and speaking is also part of these movements. And what I can say is that even while sleeping, our brain tries to rest and tries to reorganize the different connections between the different areas of the brain. So during this process, the brain may activate other areas. For example, the ones responsible of muscle movements, of speaking, and so on. But this is a very normal thing that any one of us can experience. But if when he wakes up, he feels tired and his sleep is not regenerative, so here what he is experiencing is more likely to be pathological rather than physiological states. So I can't give a clear answer about that, since I don't know how this is impacting his daily activities and life. So if it has a negative impact on his daily activities, so maybe he should talk about it with a doctor. But if this doesn't have no impact on his life, so I think it's very normal to experience such a thing while sleeping.
Okay, so thank you, Siham. I think now you're going to move to eating disturbances. We don't have any.
Yeah. Okay. So for eating disturbances, here again, I'm going to explain what is normal, and then you can understand what is abnormal. So you are going to feel hungry when you have a very low blood sugar and fatty acids. This pushes your liver to stimulate some regions in your brain, like the lateral region of the hypothalamus, and this will generate hunger. However, you are going what we can increase feeding is high blood sugar and fatty acids, because this pushes your liver to stimulate all the regions in your brain, like the ventral and medial parts, and this will just decrease feeding and increase satiety. And on the other hand, the adipose, or what we call fat storage, will release a specific hormone, what we call leptin. Leptin will stimulate your brain to inhibit two other substances, so the RP and the NPY. And these two substances normally increase feeding and decrease satiety. But when leptin is released, this will inhibit these two substances, and thus this will decrease feeding and increase satiety. So normally, a high fat storage will just prevent you from eating. But my question would be, why some obese people continue to eat, even though they have a very high fat storage? This is because it's not the only mechanism that can explain eating habits. This system regulates what we call real hunger, so the physical hunger. But we have another type of hunger, is what we call emotional hunger, and it is regulated by what we call the reward system. So the reward system is simply many areas in our brain that interact with each other through different neurotransmitters, and I think the most important one is dopamine. So dopamine will be released and exchanged between these areas, and this will make you feel more motivated, happy, and it promotes also sense of reward. So now we know that food like sugar and fatty food increases dopamine, and thus will just stimulate this system. That's why sometimes when we are facing a hard time and a hard situation, our brain tries to remind us, you know, if you eat sweet food, this will make you feel better and good. And this is why when we are stressed, maybe we can eat a lot of chocolate or sweet and any food with a fat texture. So here I put the difference between real hunger and what we call emotional hunger or appetite. So emotional hunger is a more instinctive desire for food, while hunger is psychological need for food and also physical need for food. It results from consuming less than recommended daily intake of calories, while emotional hunger comes on suddenly, and it's here just to make us feel better. So as I mentioned before, our emotions control our eating habits. And as I mentioned before, when we feel stress, our body will stimulate two systems, the adrenocortical system and the sympathetic nervous system. Both systems will try to help our body and help us to cope with the stressful situation by releasing many hormones like the CRF, the ACTH, and the glucocorticoids. So glucocorticoids will stimulate, as I mentioned, automatic changes and physical changes that require a lot of energy in order to help you cope with this situation. And in order to have enough energy, your body will just suppress all other activities that may also consume energy. For example, food intake. That's why during acute stress, your appetite and food intake will be suppressed. But during chronic stress, we will have a different mechanism. So these glucocorticoids will be released in a very high amounts, and they will just disturb the correct functioning of our brain, and they will increase the food intake. this is what happened during chronic stress. So that's why during stress, some people may eat a lot of food while others will just eat less. Also, in another hand, the CRF, so one of the hormones that is released during stress, increases dopamine rates. And remember, dopamine will activate the reward system, and which in return will influence food preferences for example, sugar, sweet and fatty food. So that's why when we feel stressed, we tend to eat more sweetness and fat texture foods.
Okay, so I do have a question for you, Siham, since this is a topic of interest to me. So sometimes when I'm stressed, it depends. In fact, sometimes I feel like I want to eat more food, and sometimes I completely lose my appetite when I'm really stressed. So I don't have kind of a sole direction that, and only something, just one result of stress, that either I lose appetite or I eat a lot of food. It depends on the situation, it depends on the environment I'm in. Is it weird because to have those kind of symptoms simultaneously? I mean, sometimes I feel like I want to eat a lot of food and sometimes I completely lose appetite.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, it depends on the situation and the intensity of stress. So maybe the situation is not stressful enough to the point that it releases a lot of glucocorticoids. So when you have, you know, let's say, if you are experiencing acute and very hard situation, this will increase the alertness. And also the fight or flight response. Remember, always the fight or flight response that your body will develop when you face a stressful situation. So this will decrease appetite. But if you now facing less stressful situation, but at the same time, this has been lasting for, let's say, a couple of days or maybe weeks. So because it is lasting for too long, this will disturb the functioning of your brain, and thus it will decrease your appetite. So it depends on the intensity and also the duration of the hard situation.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Of course, we have other factors that may influence food choices, for example, biological and genetic factors. You know, some universal biological predisposition for food preferences may exist. For example, preferences for sweetness and fatty texture. Also, family and social influence. If you are living with people who are used to eat a lot of sugar, so probably you're more likely to eat also more sugar, and also activity level. So evolution gave us bodies that store energy reserves for hard times. And these reserves increase when we increase eating and decrease physical activity. And for example, our ancestors used to burn around 1,000 kilocalories a day, which is much higher than what we would burn through a traditional activity. So, but we have the same appetite as our ancestors. So it means that the modern lifestyle tends to make us fat. And in such environments, you can just trust your appetite, because your body thinks you are storing more and more food by moving so little, and because you are preparing yourself for a hard situation, which is not the case. So physical activity can help you keep this balance between eating, storing food, and appetite. So physical activity will not just allow you to have appropriate body weight, but also it regulates your appetite.
Okay, interesting. Yes, there is actually something that I would like to ask you about before moving to the next point, which is the relation between social media, especially Instagram, and eating disorders or disturbances. Because from what we know, that Instagram has an effect on the way we eat, especially that of Instagram is trying to mediate that image of the perfect body for young ladies, and women get really and easily affected by this. So what do you have to say on this?
Okay, so I think your question has two parts, if I get it right. So the first thing is the impact of social media, or I would say screens in general, and our eating habits, and then the social influence on our choices. First, if, for example, if we are eating, but at the same time we are on Facebook, Instagram, or doing anything else, our brain can focus on two things. So it will either focus on eating or social media. And because we want to focus on social media, we tend to not focus on food, on what we are eating. So we tend to eat more than recommended. So that's why social media or using screens in general impacts negatively your eating habits and also the amount of food you will be taking. Now, speaking about social media influence or social influence in general, what we call the standards, the standard, I don't know if it's correct in English, social standards. What I want to say is that for example, feminist movements encourage what we call body positive. It encourages women to accept their body weight and also try to feel comfortable with themselves and not try to lose weight just because society finds fat women ugly. What I can say is that I'm against this this idea of body positive, because high body weight will have a negative impact on your health. So I don't think it is smart to just tell everyone that, you know, you should accept your high body weight because if you want to lose weight, you're doing it because others find it ugly. But no, you should first think about your health and your physical health. Keep in mind that obesity is now a chronic disease, and it is related to many other cardiovascular illnesses. So if you care about yourself and you care about health, physical health, you should consider losing weight. Now, if you are, for example, have other, let's say, problems with your body that you can't change, and the only solution is accepting here, yes, I can be for body positive and I can encourage people accept what they can change. But if you can change something and to make it better, and always think about your mental and physical health, I would just encourage you to go for it. Of course, don't pay attention to what people say around you. Just focus on science and focus on your own health.
So basically, no to body shaming. Yes, we're taking care of.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
So much.
So yeah, now I wanted to share with you some interesting facts, and Ayman just asked a question about the MENNA diet. Here's a very interesting study about the MENNA diet supplemented with fish oil. This study, I think, was conducted in Australia or Europe. I think it was in Australia. Many young people tried to follow a MENNA diet for about 6 months. Of course, med diet supplemented with fish oil. And the med diet group reported significantly greater improvements in depression, and also increased omega-3. We can find omega-3 in, for example, fish oil, was associated with reduced stress and negative emotions. So a balanced diet like the med diet, supplemented, for example, with omega-3, can help you have a good physical condition, but also help you cope with stressful situations and improves also your mental health. And also speaking about the relationship between eating and mental health, there is also a relationship between our brain and our gut. Our brain is connected to our digestive system through different pathways. One of them is the neural pathway. In our gut, we have what we call microbiota. So microbiota are just microorganisms that literally share our body surface with us. These microbiota, some of these microorganisms will decrease GABA receptors in our brain. And this will decrease anxiety and low mood and stress in general. And also these microorganisms help you produce more serotonin. And serotonin is a hormone of happiness. So a lot of serotonin will make you feel happy and also in a good mood. And these microorganisms increase serotonin rates, which means that microbiota is helping you cope with hard situations. So how can you help these microorganisms to survive in your body? You can do this through following appropriate diet. Many studies try to compare between the different diets, and now we know that the med diet is one, if not the only diet that improves the diversity and the richness of microbiota. So here again, developing good habits, good eating habits will help you have a good physical but also a mental health. Ayman asked a question now that the med diet is not really appropriate during this period because we are moving so little, and we are literally eating the same amounts of food as before. Well, you know, the med diet, it depends on what you are eating. So this is what a med diet looks like. If you are eating, so for example, we have daily servings of vegetables and fruits, of cereals, legumes, nuts, seeds, of olive oil, a few times a week of fish and seafood, dairy, eggs, daily to weekly. So for example, if you are eating a lot of fish, of vegetables and fruits, if you are snacking on nuts, if you are eating sweets for monthly to very small amounts, so I don't think you are going to gain a lot of weight. I think that if the real med diet is supposed to keep a very appropriate body weight and prevents from having health problems like obesity. So, you know, we are supposed to consume sweets that are real problem monthly to or very small amounts, with or without coronavirus, with or without pandemic, with or without physical and activity. So I think appropriate and well followed med diet will just keep you healthy and you don't have to worry about it. And here I put some examples of snacks, because I think that during this period we are snacking a lot. And I put these examples just to show you that what can be delicious, what healthy food can be delicious too. So for example, dark chocolate with almonds. So dark chocolate is supposed to have less sugar than normal one. Hummus with just cucumber. Yogurt with any other fruit. So here you have berries, but any other fruit would be fine. Olives, tuna, mozzarella, or any other cheese with tomato also is a good snack. So as you can see here, we can have very healthy snacks, but also delicious ones. So I think every one of us should reconsider our eating habits during this pandemic. And I don't think it's very hard to eat healthy and stay healthy. Okay, so I have just finished, and I would be happy to continue taking questions or any thoughts you want to share with me.
Okay, so thank you, Siham, so much for your insightful presentation and for the valuable information you provided us.